Hi, welcome to Ammosmith.com. What we're going to do today is we're going to go over the Consistent Crimp arm from Precision Accuracy, and I want to also go over the two dies that they're going to be used with. And what we're going to do is, in this video, we're really going to focus on the Collet neck sizing die and how it works, and then in another video we're going to go over the factory crimp die. Basically, what this arm does is the same thing as a torque wrench you would use in the automotive industry, but it's been highly modified on this end. And over here we have a scale and a bezel on here in order to adjust it. When we adjust this, it does so in 1 pound increments, like this. And this goes from approximately 15 pounds of usable torque on this up to 75 pounds, which nobody's really going to have to go that high on anything to crimp or to size. But the nice part about it is once you have your dies adjusted, this thing is exactly accurate. And I want to show you now, once I change the camera angle, how the dies work in relation to the arm here. Okay, here we have two examples of 7mm magnum brass. One has been sized through the Collet die and the other one has not. But this is the Lee Collet Sizing Die. It's a really simple die. And what I want to do is take it apart and show you how it works. It's very simple and it does its job very effectively. And as we go through this process, we're going to do some tests on a runout gauge to show you how precise it actually really is. Okay, here's the Lee Collet Sizing Die disassembled. This is the die body with the indexing collar on here, or indexing nut, whatever you want to call it. This is the part that actually does the sizing. And this is, I'm not sure what they call this part here, but this is what forces the pedals down on the die itself in order to close up the neck of the bullet case. And this is the mandrel / decapping pin. And this is the end cap that keeps it all together. This is aluminum. All this stuff is fairly well made. The nice thing about this is easy to take apart and clean, and there's nothing really about this that you have to really worry about other than this area right here on the sizing piece itself. And the only modification I would do with this when you get it is to clean it and use either a dry film lubricant or molybdenum disulfide or something in there in order to make it a little easier for it to open and close, because there's a little bit of resistance in there. It's not a big deal, but it's something to look out for. I want to change the angle of the camera and focus on some of these parts individually on how they work. What we have here is the Collet neck sizer, the Collet itself, and a 7mm magnum case. The way it works is pretty simple. Is when the cartridge case goes in here, it does so like that. You really can't see it too well, but when we look at it like this, what it does is it allows just the neck itself to be sized. And the way it does it is it closes up on it. And how that works is the pressure from the ram goes through here, and when it pushes downward like this, it forces the pedals closed. And what the mandrel does is this makes it to where it only will reduce this neck just to the point where it'll accept the bullet. You can squeeze it down as hard as you want, but it'll only go down so far. If you exert too much pressure, if you're not using the Consistent Crimp, what can happen is this portion here can get rounded. It'll do that on a 308. Not so much on this case here because it's belted, and the belt on a case is supported in here. So when the whole thing is assembled together, is kind of like this. You have this portion here, the mandrel and a decamping pin, and then when the case goes into the shell holder, like this, it will decap the case. This here will force it to squeeze it down, and then the shell holder will extract the case, and then you're done. What the consistent crimp will do is precisely control how much pressure you're putting on the neck itself. Depending on how much bullet tension you want, the cartridge case to hold will depend on how much torque you put on the arm. Now the dies itself are very easy to disassemble and reassemble, and I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this for you, and it goes real quick. Okay, we have the die body. What you want to do is take this portion, the non-tapered portion, point down and drop it in. Take this piece, if you look at it, there's a solid side and there's the inlet with the tapered side. Pop that in. Drop the mandrel down and push down. Take the cap, screw it back on, and you're finished. That's how the Collet neck sizing die works. It's a really ingenious idea. The materials are of decent quality. This is not like the bushing sizing dies from either Redding or RCBS, where you need to have different size bushings in here for different sizing applications, where you need to know the exact wall thickness right here. This, you don't need to worry about that at all. All that you need to worry about is the amount of tension you put on it. And that's where the consistent crimp comes into play. Setting up your consistent crimp arm is pretty straightforward. I want you to pay attention to what goes on down here on this linkage. On this particular press, this is the RCBS Ammo Master press that comes in our 50 BMG kit. When you take the arm and come all the way down like this, you're at the cam over point right here. This is where the most force has been exerted. You want this arm to be about level or a little less when you're setting up your die. So go ahead and let the arm go down. Bring it up to about here. Go ahead and lean your body into it, and then run your die down as far as you can. And right here we can see it's just about level. It's about perfect. Now we have at the point where it's not near the cam over, and we're not going to have to worry about overexerting any pressure on either the factory crimp die or on the Collet neck sizing die. And all we need to do now is determine whether or not we're exerting enough pressure to size the case in order for it to have enough tension to hold the bullet. When we make our adjustments, once it's on the press here, all we need to do is pull this back and turn the handle clockwise, like so, in order to increase the torque by 1 pound increments at a time. In order to back off, it's the same thing. Pull the collar up, turn the handle counterclockwise, perform the same thing. All you want to do is exert enough force in order to size the case, in order for it to decently have a good grip on the bullet. So if you're not going to use a consistent crimp arm to crimp, you can use the size on the Collet die. That way you're not going to have to worry about the bullet falling into the case itself when you try to load it. On the Collet neck sizing die, what we need to do is determine how much pressure is it going to take a 7mm Magnum, whatever case you're using, in this case 7mm Magnum, how much pressure it'll take in order to have enough tension on the neck in order for it to decently hold a bullet. Now, on some cartridges, or actually the rifles, it will depend a lot on how your chamber is cut. If you have a wide chamber, you're going to end up having to size it a little more than you would from another rifle. But basically, it's all going to be determined inside the die itself. So if you can push the bullet in like so, easily like this, then what you're going to want to do is add more tension to it. Also, with this bullet being the way it is, it's actually okay right now, and you want it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these cases and use it as a headspace gauge for my rifle. And what I'll do, and we'll do this in another video, is we'll just start the bullet like this, then we'll chamber it. And what it'll do is it'll find the throat where the lands and grooves start. Then when we completely bolt it up and lock it into battery, it'll tell us where our overall length is. That way we can seat the bullet off the lands and grooves where we want it. For now, we want to determine how much pressure it's going to take in order for this to have enough tension on it in order to hold the bullet. I already know pretty much it's going to be about 25 pounds, but I'm going to go ahead and do it at 15 to give you a demonstration. It goes up into the die, push down, it ejects the old primer, and you'll hear it click. That tells us we're at the point where 15 pounds has been exerted and we're done. If we can still push the bullet in like we were able to do before, which we can, and I can actually free spin it in here, we want to add more. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply 25 pounds to it. Let me go ahead and adjust it. Run it up into the die again. Then once we determine where we want it to be, you see it. You may not be able to see it, but there's a little bit of play in the bullet here. But about 25 pounds is about the start where we want to start paying attention to how much we're exerting to it. So I'm going to bring it up to 35 pounds in order to give it the amount of tension that I want, or reasonably want. That's a lot better. Even though this bullet can still be pushed in by hand, if you want that kind of tension on your bullet, go ahead and write it down in your notes and size all your cases that way. If you want to add more tension to it, go ahead and add to it. I would do it about 1 pound at a time. See, what you want to do is determine what your rifle likes. No two rifles are going to be the same. So right here on the case, we want to add it by 1 pound at a time and using the same load. So once we're at the range, on our notebook, once we find that point with that particular charge, with that particular amount of neck tension, you know you're set. Then from there, you go back to the bench and you use your factory crimp die and apply the crimp in a similar way. And what I'm going to do is we're going to take this press to the range with us, and we're going to add the crimp to it 1 pound at a time until we find the sweet spot.